どうしたって消せない夢も止まれないまま誰かのために強くなれるなら何度でも立ち上がれ
This comic is titled One Night of Love. After a drunken night, she went into the wrong room and provoked the insatiable devil. She was so scared that she ran away when the sun rose, but he kept haunting her and making her feel at a loss. He said that a night of love means 100 nights of affection, and his heart was thinking about her every minute and every second, and he wanted her to be responsible. The soft morning light shines on the gauze curtain hanging in front of the window. Messy clothes are scattered all over the floor, and an enchanting atmosphere fills the spacious and large luxury suite. The heavy feeling of oppression made Su Jinhuan feel suffocated and uncomfortable, and she reached out her hand to push him away in a daze. Ouch, my head! It hurts! A sharp pain came from her head. Su Jinhuan slowly opened her misty eyes. The messy bed, clothes scattered on the floor, and the sound of dripping water coming from the bathroom all reminded her of what had just happened. How come there is mail? Su Jinhuan quickly lifted the quilt, looked down at her naked self, put her hands over her mouth, and her charming eyes were filled with shock. What happened? I just remember... Fragmented memories emerged in her mind. She attended a classmate's birthday party in a hotel last night and drank a glass of juice mixed with alcohol by mistake. She had a poor alcohol tolerance and got drunk easily after drinking. She originally planned to go to the bathroom to wash her face to sober up, but accidentally he bumped into someone else. Be careful. Handsome guy. You have a good figure. Miss, you are playing with fire! She would probably never forget how stupid she was when she threw herself into someone else's arms. Then the blood instantly drained from Su Jinhuan's palm-sized cheeks. She got drunk and kissed the man and even took off his clothes. Could it be that she raped him? It's so disgusting. She is so tough and has done many things that women dare not do. Do you know what you are doing? Touch you. Can't you feel it? She doesn't know whether the man is fat or flat. If he is an ugly old man who picks his toes, she would have to jump off the building. Miss, relax. Oh my God, I pushed a guy down last night. Su Jinhuan's face turned pale and she quickly pulled back the quilt. Get out of here quickly, or... She was about to get out of bed, put on her clothes, and run away. The bathroom door suddenly opened and a tall and straight figure like a pine tree exuding a strong and refreshing aura came out. Ah! The sudden fright caused Su Jinhuan, who was sore and weak all over, to fall miserably off the bed. The floor was covered with carpet, and although she didn't get hurt from the fall, she felt so embarrassed that she wanted to dig a hole and bury herself. You awake? Su Jinhuan quickly picked up her clothes to cover herself, looked up, and instantly felt stunned. He was so handsome, with a handsome face that could make people fall in love with him at first sight, and his strong body that was full of strength, especially his pair of cold and evil black eyes, as deep as a dark and cold pool, which made people gradually fall into it and unable to extricate themselves. Seeing him taking a step forward, Su Jinhuan shouted anxiously, "Don't come over!" She quickly climbed onto the bed holding her clothes, hid under the quilt, and quickly put on her wrinkled clothes. Su Jinhuan crawled out from under the quilt. It was so terrible. No wonder she felt so much pain all over her body. Su Jinhuan was trembling with shock. She was still alive, thank God for that. She saw the checkbook in the man's hand. His overly sharp eyes were fixed on the startled little woman on the bed. She had messy, shoulder-length hair, a panicked little face, and seemed to be shorter than his shoulders. Her timid, watery eyes made her look like a little creature that had strayed into a trap. She was so beautiful that it made people want to bully her. The man's heart couldn't help but tighten. The stagnant water that had been silent for 30 years was shaken for the first time. Huo Lichen waved his hand, and the check fell in front of Su Jinhuan. Your skills are too poor. Considering that you made me happy all night, this is your reward. Su Jinhuan crawled out from under the quilts and looked at the checkbook in the man's hand. She was stunned for a moment. What did he think of her? A prostitute? She took a quick look at it and saw that it was a full 100,000 yuan. He was really generous. Too little? Seeing that she didn't take the check, the man frowned slightly and a sharp look flashed in his eyes. Resisting the urge to bite him, she found her wallet among her messy clothes. What did she want to do? Then she raised her head and chest gracefully. Your skills are too poor and you made my back ache and legs cramp. Since you stayed with me all night, this is your payment for sleeping with me. She opened her wallet and saw only a few coins. She gritted her teeth, took out a coin, and threw it in front of him with a clang. In the gradually brightening sunlight, the 1 yuan coin reflected a dazzling light that was bright enough to blind people. The man squinted his deep and cold eyes and glared at her. For the first time in his life, Huo Lichen was completely stunned. Su Jinhuan lowered her eyelids, her pretty cheeks were whiter than snow and her bright eyes were filled with moving starlight. It's better to lose the battle than to lose the fight. Who is afraid of whom? The good impression that Su Jinhuan had just had on him because of his appearance disappeared in an instant. It was only after the sound of the door closing loudly that he came to his senses. However, Su Jinhuan had already escaped. Su Jinhuan rushed out of the room and patted her hot cheeks, feeling a little sad. Her first time was gone just like that, and she was even misunderstood as a prostitute. Fortunately, she was not weak, and she fought back. Miss, you have successfully caught my attention. This is a resort hotel, very large and luxurious. It was still early, and there were not many people around. Su Jinhuan hurried out of the corridor. She had to rush to the hospital to pay her brother's medical bills. This younger brother was the child her mother had after she left the Su family and remarried. He had a very unfortunate life. 3 years ago, he was diagnosed with leukemia. 2 years ago, his parents died in a car accident. Before her death, her mother entrusted her with the care of her younger brother, and this heavy burden fell on her. Su Jinhuan walked across the yard and was about to go around the swimming pool when someone suddenly called her name from behind. Su Jinhuan! She subconsciously looked back and suddenly felt a push on her back. Her feet slipped and her body fell into the swimming pool. With a splash, the cold water quickly surged towards her. Looking at the young people on the shore who were cheering, led by Su Qingwan, Su Jinhuan narrowed her beautiful eyes, which were sparkling with anger, and her eyes were as sharp as a knife. Su Qingwan was her half-sister, who was less than a year apart in age. She was jealous of her grandfather's kindness to her when he was alive, and had always hated her and found various ways to bully her. Sister, you were so careless. How did you fall into the swimming pool? The water inside is cold. Please get out quickly. Sister, please grab my hand quickly and I will pull you up. Su Qingwan pretended to be anxious and shouted. The friends beside her couldn't help but laugh at her hypocrisy, as it was obviously she who pushed the person down. It was late autumn now, and the sun had not yet risen. The water in the swimming pool was indeed very cold. Su Jinhuan endured the chill that made her shiver and slowly swam towards her. Su Qingwan squatted by the pool with a malicious smile on her face and stretched out her hand to her. How could she be so kind as to pull her up? She just wanted to continue teasing her. Su Jinhuan reached out and pushed her wet hair back, revealing her breathtakingly beautiful and delicate face. Everyone was stunned by her peerless beauty, like a lotus emerging from the water. So beautiful. A hint of contempt flashed in Su Jinhuan's eyes. She swam over slowly, suddenly grabbed Su Qingwan's wrist, held it tightly, and then pulled. Ah! Su Qingwan wanted to pull her hand back, but it was too late. She screamed, her body leaned forward, and she fell into the swimming pool in a mess. She originally wanted to grab Su Jinhwan's hand, but when she thought she was going to pull her up, she pulled her hand back. Unexpectedly, she was grabbed by the wrist and pulled into the swimming pool. Su Jinhwan held her wrist with one hand and the back of her head with the other and pressed her hard into the water. Su Jinhwan's head was pressed into the water. Her breath was taken away bit by bit. She struggled excitedly, but her strength was not as great as Su Jinhwan's. The more panicked she was, the more water choked into her mouth. The uncomfortable feeling of suffocation made her feel the threat of death. A charming smile brighter than the sun blossomed on her pretty face. Su Jinhwan struggled in the water for a long time before Su Jinhwan let go of her hand. Looking at her pale and frightened face, the smile on her face became even brighter and more charming, but her cold eyes without any warmth were like the eyes of a devil, which made people shudder. You! Su Jinhwan choked on the water and wanted to curse, but her throat was itchy and she kept coughing. Her tears and snot were choked out, and her throat was twisted into a circle, looking miserable. She curled her lips and smiled softly. The feeling of having your breath taken away bit by bit and your lungs being emptied, isn't it fun? The companion, who finally came to his senses from the girl's stunning beauty, shouted, "Jinhwan, what's wrong with you? Come up quickly!" Su Jinhwan glared at Su Jinhwan with hatred. Just as she was about to swim to the shore, her scalp suddenly felt numb and her hair was grabbed by Su Jinhwan's hand. She turned around and roared in frustration. "Su Jinhwan, what else do you want?" She stole the limelight and embarrassed herself in front of everyone. "Isn't that enough? Don't be so excited. I don't want to do anything. I just want to give you a warm reminder. Don't play such childish and boring tricks in the future. Next time, I may not let go of your hand so quickly." Su Jinhwan had a bright smile on her face under the bright sunshine. "Let go." Su Jinhwan snatched back her hair and stepped back a foot, staring at her fiercely with angry eyes as if she wanted to burn 2 holes in her body. Su Jinhwan chuckled contemptuously, turned around, and swam to the other side to reach the shore. "Su Jinhwan, just wait and see, I'm not done with you!" Su Jinhwan clenched her fist and slammed it heavily into the water. The splashing water droplets blurred her hateful eyes.
Su Jinhwan climbed ashore and hurried out. Wow, so beautiful. Is she an artist? She's so pretty. As soon as she walked out of the door, a gust of cold wind blew and she sneezed out of nowhere. So cold. A thick, warm coat flew over and covered her head directly. Su Jinhwan quickly reached out and pulled it off. When she saw the handsome face that she never wanted to see again in her life, her legs trembled. "If you want to be seen naked, you can refuse my coat." Guo Lichen's pretty lips curved slightly. The girl in front of him looked like a harmless little rabbit, which made people defenseless. But in fact, she was a sharp little tiger who could knock down the enemy unexpectedly. The scene in the swimming pool just now really amazed him. Su Jinhwan looked down and saw that her clothes were soaked and stuck to her skin, barely visible. Her fair face turned red immediately, and she quickly put on her coat and pulled it tight. The masculine scent of a man instantly lingered in her nostrils, making her face slightly hot. A woman who knows the times is a good woman. She looked up at him with a gorgeous smile on her face. Thank you for your clothes. I will give it back to you next time we meet." "Where are you going? I'll take you there." The man's sexy, thin lips curled up slightly and he narrowed his ink-stained black eyes, glancing at her with interest. This girl easily touched his heartstrings and made him want to approach her from a distance. No, thanks. She has a pair of breathtaking eyes as bright as stars, a straight nose, and gorgeous red lips. When she smiles, the corners of her lips are slightly raised, like dimples, which is breathtaking. Last night, so shy. When she saw him, her mind couldn't help but emerge with the scene of being tormented to death by him last night. Her whole body was uncontrollably hot. Bye-bye. She was about to walk around him, but suddenly, her wrist was tightened. She was frightened and her bright eyes widened. Her body was pulled into the man's broad and strong arms. Su Jinhwan bumped into the man's deep and sharp eyes, which were like a dark pool that made people gradually sink deeper and deeper and unable to extricate themselves. This man's eyes were magical, almost sucking her soul in. The man's hand lifted her chin almost rudely. Su Jinhuan suppressed the throbbing in her heart, blinked her innocent eyes, and asked in a soft voice with a hint of hoarseness, "What do you want to do?" The man's powerful long fingers seemed to want to crush her. He lowered his head and looked at her still delicate red lips. His dark eyes were stained with evil, and his fiery thin lips wanted to kiss her soft red lips. "Your smell makes me excited. I want to continue." Shit! Su Jinhuan's head suddenly buzzed with a loud bang. It had been a whole night and it was still not enough? This powerful fighting power scared her so much that her heart felt hot and her legs went weak. She swallowed her saliva, slowly tilted her head back, avoiding his kiss, and raised a frightened, dry laugh at the corner of her lips. "I was drunk last night. We are all adults, so I won't take it to heart. You don't have to take it to heart either. I think it's best if we don't have any further contact, okay?" The man's deep eyes turned cold in an instant, and the air around him seemed like condensed ice, so cold that it was creepy. "I have something else to do, so I'll leave first. Bye." "Well, I think we shouldn't see each other again." Su Jinhuan pried her fingers apart one by one, then slowly backed away. Seeing that he did not catch up with her, she immediately turned around and ran away as fast as she could, as if she had seen a ghost. Looking at her hurriedly fleeing back, the man narrowed his narrow black eyes and clenched his fist, which still retained a hint of her fragrance. Thinking of where he was going today, the man's sexy lips curved slightly. "The last name is Su. What a coincidence." "Master, go to the central hospital." Su Jinhuan jumped into a taxi. She stopped on the road and looked back at the cold, unruly, and domineering man who was standing in front of the hotel gate like a god. "My heart is beating so fast, so embarrassing." She reached out and patted her face, trying to cool down the heat. After leaving the hotel, Su Jinhuan hurried to the payment window of the hospital and handed over her bank card to pay the medical expenses for her younger brother Xiao Yuan. The cashier took the bank card, swiped it on the machine, and said apologetically, "Miss, your bank card balance is insufficient. You can choose another payment method." "What? Impossible. Try swiping it again." Su Jinhuan's heart trembled in surprise. Before her grandfather died, he set up a living foundation for her. The foundation allocated a fixed amount of living expenses to her every month without interruption. She used this money to pay Xiaoyuan's medical expenses. The cashier took the bank card and passed it through the machine again, still apologetically saying, "Miss, I'm sorry, your bank card does have insufficient balance. Please check it before you come back." "Okay." Su Jinhuan took the bank card back and hurried to the ATM in front of the hospital to check the balance. Looking at the number displayed on the balance, she was stunned. Impossible. The remaining balance is only $9.99. When my grandfather passed away, he set up a foundation for me and gives me living expenses every month. My brother has leukemia and needs to take medicine every day. Once the medication is stopped, the consequences will be disastrous. Staring at the numbers displayed on the screen, Su Jinhuan's clear and charming eyes were shining with a cold light and her fists were clenched tightly. "You are challenging my bottom line." It seemed that someone was going to challenge her bottom line. Su Jinhuan returned to the Su family. She didn't care about her embarrassment. "Where is my dad?" "The master is meeting guests in the study. Miss, please don't." She learned from the servant that her father, Su Zhenxiong, was meeting guests in the study, so she rushed over directly. He was the head of the foundation, and only he had the right to stop giving her living expenses. Xiao Yuan's condition is serious, and he has to take medicine every day. If he stops taking the medicine, the consequences will be disastrous. She absolutely cannot let him stop paying for her living expenses. "Hey, stop. The master is discussing business with a distinguished guest in the study. Don't disturb him. Go back to your room." Mrs. Su came out of the study and immediately closed the door when she saw her, looking displeased. Su Jinhuan narrowed her beautiful eyes, which were filled with chill, and said in a cold tone, "Get out of the way. I have something important to discuss with my dad." Mrs. Su stood in front of the door, looking at her disheveled appearance and the woman who came back wearing a man's coat, with a look of contempt on her face. "If you have anything to say, wait until the master comes out. Get out of here and don't embarrass yourself here." She hated ignorant people the most, especially this damn stepdaughter. Su Jinhuan's lips curled up slightly, and her fair and delicate face, like an enamel doll, showed a cold and domineering look. "I want to go in. Can you stop me?" "You uneducated bastard, what's your attitude?" Mrs. Su was angry, raised her hand and slapped her in the face. Su Jinhuan suddenly grabbed her wrist. her cold eyes gleaming with murderous intent. Just try and hit me if you dare. Her palm was very strong, as if she wanted to crush her hand. Madame Sue screamed like a pig being slaughtered. Ouch! You damn bastard who was struck by lightning! What are you doing? Let go! Let me go! The door creaked open and Su Jinxiong came out. Don't you know there's a distinguished guest in the study? Su Jinxiong came out looking unhappy and asking, Why are you making so much noise here? How can you be so disrespectful? As soon as Su Jinhuan loosened her grip, Madame Su immediately cried out to the sky and complained aggrievedly. Master, I have already told her that you were meeting a distinguished guest in the study, but she insisted on going in. Dad. Su Jinhuan didn't bother to pay attention to her and squinted at Su Jinxiong. Did you stop the living allowance that the foundation gave me? That was the money I used to pay for my brother's medical treatment. Su Jinxiong's face darkened and he said unhappily, What does that bastard have to do with me? Your mother's remarried child, do you still want me to care about his life or death? And you, who have graduated and can support yourself, in order to motivate you to work hard and not to indulge in pleasure, I have decided to suspend giving you living expenses. Su Jinhuan clenched his fists and said angrily, I don't need you to care about his life or death. I just want what I deserve back. What's wrong, sister? We have guests at home. If you were seen making such a fuss, it would bring shame to our Su family. Su Qingwan came with a cup of hot coffee. Su Jinxiong raised his eyebrows and said, Still Qingwan insensible. Su Jinxiong raised his hand and said impatiently, Su Jinhuan, that's enough. Stop talking. I have made up my mind and it won't change. The foundation will stop paying your living expenses from this month until you get married. Marry? How is that possible? She doesn't even have a boyfriend now. Absolutely not. Dad! Su Jinhuan took a step forward. A strange sneer appeared on Su Qingwan's lips, and suddenly there was a click sound and the cup fell over, and the scalding hot coffee splashed towards Su Jinhuan. A strange sneer appeared on Su Qingwan's lips. Thinking about how she almost drowned in the swimming pool in the morning, she was burning with anger. The cup of coffee was freshly brewed by Su Qingwan and was still boiling hot. If it was splashed on the face, it would definitely burn and disfigure her. Seeing that the coffee was about to splash on Su Jinhuan's face at the moment when everyone was worried for her, Su Jinhuan quickly pulled up her coat to cover her face. The coffee splashed on the coat and her face was not hurt, but the hand holding the coat was affected and the back of her hand was red. The coffee cup fell to the ground with a clang and broke into pieces. Su Qingwan covered her mouth with her hand, looking frightened and innocent. Sister, I'm sorry. My hand slipped just now. I didn't mean to do that. Ugh! A burning pain came from the back of her hand, making her face turn pale. Bring me the burn ointment now! Suddenly, a tall and handsome figure came out of the study room quickly. You? Why are you here? Su Jinhuan looked at the man in front of her, who was nervous for her in surprise. It was actually him. She had thought that she would never see him again in this life, but she didn't expect to meet him again so soon. He held her hand with a strong man's hand and stared at the back of her hand that was swollen and red. His deep eyes flashed with fierce anger and his deep voice was full of shocking, domineering power. Didn't you hear that? Burn ointment!